Most people think they are reading others when in reality they are only listening to the noise inside their own head, because true observation requires silence, and silence is uncomfortable for the average mind that is addicted to reacting, judging, assuming, and projecting meaning where none has yet been earned. The first and most important rule of reading people without them knowing is this: you do not begin by trying to understand them, you begin by emptying yourself. Napoleon understood this long before modern psychology put language to it. He watched before he acted, measured before he moved, and allowed others to reveal themselves while he remained unreadable. Observation is not passive. It is a disciplined restraint. Most people rush to interpretation because interpretation feels powerful, but it is false power. Real power comes from delay. When you interpret too early, you contaminate the data. You start seeing what you expect rather than what is actually happening. This is why smart people often misread others more than simple people do. Intelligence accelerates pattern making, but under social pressure, those patterns are often projections. You assume confidence where there is anxiety, honesty where there is strategy, hostility where there is fear. Observation without interpretation means watching behavior without assigning motive. It means noticing posture without labeling it dominance, eye contact without calling it confidence, silence without assuming insecurity. Every person has a baseline, and without knowing someone's baseline behavior, you are blind. A man who avoids eye contact might be deceptive, or he might simply be introverted. A woman who speaks quickly might be nervous, or she might be excited. Until you establish what is normal for that person, deviation means nothing. This is where most people fail. They confuse single moments with patterns. Real observers collect data quietly over time. They watch how a person behaves when relaxed, when rushed, when bored, when challenged. They notice how someone enters a room when no one is watching versus when attention is present. They notice how a person treats those who offer them nothing. Observation is about context, not snapshots. The impatient mind wants instant conclusions because conclusions feel like control. But premature conclusions make you predictable, and predictability makes you manipulable. The person who waits sees the whole board. To read people without them knowing, you must become psychologically invisible. And invisibility begins with restraint. When you observe without reacting, people feel safe revealing themselves. The moment you respond quickly through facial expression, verbal affirmation, disagreement, or judgment, you alter their behavior. You become part of the system you are trying to analyze. Silence removes you from the equation. Silence allows people to fill the space with who they really are. This is why great interrogators, negotiators, and strategists speak less than they are capable of. They understand that every word they withhold gives the other person room to expose themselves. Observation also requires emotional neutrality. If you like someone too much, you will excuse their tells. If you dislike someone, you will exaggerate them. Emotional investment corrupts perception. This is why leaders who read people well are often described as cold or distant, not because they lack feeling, but because they delay feeling until understanding is complete. Napoleon did not trust enthusiasm or fear in the early stages of assessment. He trusted patterns. He trusted repetition. He trusted what people did when they thought the moment had passed. Observation means watching what changes when pressure enters the room. People reveal their true selves not in calm moments, but in transitions when they are interrupted, contradicted, challenged, or ignored. Watch the micro adjustments, the tightening of the jaw, the shift in posture, the change in breathing rhythm. These are not interpretations yet. They are signals. The disciplined observer collects signals without commentary. Most people comment internally immediately. He's insecure. She's lying. They're confident. This internal narration feels harmless, but it locks perception prematurely. Once you label someone, you stop seeing new information. Your brain filters out contradictions to preserve coherence. Observation requires you to stay uncomfortable in uncertainty. This is why few people master it. Uncertainty feels weak to the ego. The ego wants certainty, even false certainty, because it feels like control. But the person who tolerates uncertainty longer than others gains leverage. Reading people is not about guessing correctly. It is about delaying guesses until the picture is undeniable. Another critical element of observation is distinguishing performance from default behavior. Many people are actors in social environments. They perform confidence, competence, dominance, or kindness because they believe it is expected. Performance is exhausting. Default behavior is effortless. The longer you observe someone without rewarding their performance, the faster the mask slips. This is why strategic silence is so effective. When you do not validate or challenge immediately, people continue talking. They fill the space. In doing so, they drift from performance into authenticity. Their speech becomes less polished. Their body language relaxes or tightens naturally. This transition is where truth lives. Observation also means noticing inconsistencies, not judging them. A person whose words and body move in opposite directions is not automatically deceptive, but they are internally conflicted. Conflict is information. Someone who claims certainty but displays hesitation is signaling internal resistance. Someone who downplays importance but leans forward physically is revealing investment. These are not conclusions. They are data points. The observer stores them. Over time, data converges. Patterns emerge. Meaning becomes obvious without forcing it. The greatest danger in reading people is confirmation bias, the tendency to look for evidence that supports your initial assumption. Observation before interpretation protects you from this trap. It keeps your perception clean. It allows reality to speak louder than expectation. Napoleon's enemies often misread him because they interpreted his silence as weakness. They assumed retreat where there was reorganization, hesitation where there was calculation. Napoleon understood that people project their own limitations onto others. By remaining silent and unreadable, he allowed enemies to misinterpret him in ways that benefited him. In daily life, the same principle applies. When you react less, people assume more, and their assumptions reveal their fears, desires, and strategies. Observation also requires physical stillness. Restless bodies miss detail. Stillness sharpens perception. This is why monks, snipers, and elite negotiators share a similar physical calm. Movement draws attention outward. Stillness pulls information inward. When you are still, others adjust around you. They speak more. They move more. They reveal more. Reading people without them knowing is not about tricks, it is about discipline. It is about resisting the urge to participate emotionally before understanding strategically. The observer is not cold. He is patient. He does not rush to be understood. He prioritizes understanding. This reverses the usual social dynamic. Most people try to show who they are. The observer lets others show themselves. This creates asymmetry. The one who knows more has leverage. The one who reveals less controls the interaction. Observation before interpretation is the foundation of all psychological insight. Without it, every advanced technique collapses into guesswork. With it, people read themselves to you. They tell you who they are through behavior, not words. And the best part is this: they never realize it's happening. Once you master observation without interpretation, the next layer reveals itself naturally. Because no matter how disciplined a person believes they are, emotion always leaks. And it leaks in moments so small that only those trained to watch without hunger for reaction ever notice them. Emotional leakage is the involuntary expression of internal states that the conscious mind is trying to suppress or manage. And this is where reading people without them knowing becomes surgical rather than speculative. Words are chosen. Reactions are exposed. People rehearse what they say, but they cannot rehearse the split second between stimulus and control. That fraction of a second is where truth lives. Napoleon understood this intuitively. He watched faces when orders were received, not when speeches were given. He watched posture when plans changed, not when confidence was announced. He knew that emotion does not reveal itself loudly, it whispers. Microreactions are those whispers. A flicker of irritation before a smile forms. A tightening of the lips before agreement. A brief widening of the eyes before composure returns. These are not dramatic tells. They are subtle confirmations of internal alignment or resistance. Most people miss them because they are too busy talking, too busy thinking about their response, or too invested in being liked. To read emotional leakage, you must be slow where others are fast. You must be calm where others seek stimulation. You must treat conversation as an observation field, not a performance stage. Emotional leakage intensifies under pressure, not because people become weaker, but because cognitive resources are finite. When someone is relaxed, they can manage their expression. When stakes rise socially, emotionally, or psychologically, the system overloads. Something slips. This is why timing matters more than intensity. A strong reaction is often intentional. A weak, brief reaction is almost always involuntary. Smart people often look for obvious signs of lying or fear and miss the real signals because they expect drama. Truth rarely announces itself dramatically. It leaks quietly. Voice is one of the most underestimated channels of emotional leakage. People focus on what is said, not how it is said. But emotion alters rhythm before content. When someone is confident, their speech tempo is steady. When they are uncertain, micropauses appear. When they are anxious, the pitch rises slightly. When they are suppressing emotion, their voice flattens unnaturally. These shifts are often dismissed as nerves or personality, but in context, they reveal internal friction. The key is comparison. You are not judging the voice in isolation. You are comparing it to the person's baseline. This is why part 1 matters. Without a baseline, leakage is meaningless. With it, leakage is confirmation. Breathing is another channel people cannot fully control. Under emotional strain, breathing becomes shallow or irregular. A person might maintain eye contact and verbal composure, but their chest rises faster, or they exhale sharply after speaking. These are not signs of guilt or fear by default. They are signs of emotional investment. Investment reveals importance. When someone claims indifference but their physiology reacts, you have found a contradiction. Contradictions are where reading becomes precise. Facial microexpressions are the most talked about and the most misunderstood. They are not magical truth detectors. They are context-dependent signals. A flash of anger does not mean hostility. It may mean frustration with oneself. A brief smile does not mean happiness. It may be a tension release. The mistake most people make is interpreting microexpressions as verdicts. The correct approach is to treat them as indicators of emotional activation. Something has been touched. Something matters. What matters is not the expression itself, but what triggered it. This is why provocation through conversation timing is powerful. When you introduce a topic casually and watch for microreactions, before the person has time to prepare, you gain information. You are not interrogating. You are observing how their system responds before defenses engage. Napoleon did this strategically. He introduced ideas subtly and watched reactions before committing. He tested loyalty, confidence, and morale through indirect exposure. In modern interactions, the same principle applies. You do not ask directly what someone wants or fears. You watch how they react when those concepts pass near them. Emotional leakage also appears in body tension. Hands clench, shoulders rise, feet shift direction. These are not conscious signals. The body prepares before the mind decides. Someone who wants to leave a conversation often turns their feet away long before they say they need to go. Someone who feels threatened may lean back slightly while maintaining verbal engagement. These are defensive micro-adjustments. Again, the observer does not label them immediately. They note them. Over time, clusters form. One signal means little. A pattern means clarity. Emotional leakage is most visible when people believe they are being understood. When someone feels safe, they drop their guard. This is why silence is again essential. Silence does not threaten. It invites. People fill silence with honesty unintentionally. They explain more than necessary. They justify. They reveal priorities. The observer listens not just to content, but to excess. Excess reveals insecurity. Brevity reveals confidence. Over-explanation is a form of emotional leakage. It signals fear of misunderstanding or judgment. Strong people state and stop. Weak people elaborate and hope. This does not mean verbosity equals weakness, but in moments of decision or boundary, explanation often betrays internal uncertainty. Napoleon rarely over-explained. He issued directives. Those who needed explanation revealed their doubt. Emotional leakage also occurs in timing. How quickly someone responds can be as revealing as what they say. Immediate agreement may indicate eagerness or dependence. Delayed response may indicate resistance or calculation. Again, context matters. The observer correlates timing with content and environment. Reading people is not about isolated signals. It is about alignment. When words, timing, body, and tone align, authenticity is high. When they diverge, something is being managed. Management indicates motive. Motive is not always malicious. It may be self-protection, but knowing motive gives you advantage. The most important principle in reading emotional leakage is this: you are not hunting lies. You are detecting load. Emotional load reveals what matters. People protect what matters. They leak around what matters. Napoleon did not need to know every intention. He needed to know where pressure points existed. Emotional leakage maps pressure points. Once you see them, you stop arguing with words and start influencing environments. You remove pressure to gain trust or increase pressure to reveal truth. The observer does not confront leakage. Confrontation triggers defense. Defense hides information. Instead, the observer adjusts conditions. This is why people never realize they are being read. There is no accusation, no challenge, no interrogation. There is only patience. Emotional leakage is unavoidable. The only variable is whether someone is present enough to notice it. Most people are not. They are too engaged in self-expression. The reader is engaged in reception. This asymmetry is power. The person who listens while others speak holds the map, and those who reveal without realizing are already exposed. Once emotional leakage is understood, the deeper structure beneath all human interaction becomes impossible to ignore. Because emotions do not exist in isolation, they move in response to power. And power is the silent architecture shaping how people speak, move, interrupt, comply, resist, and perform. Reading people without them knowing ultimately means reading power dynamics. Because every interaction is a negotiation of status, whether acknowledged or denied. Most people believe power is loud, aggressive, or visible, but real power operates quietly, shaping behavior before words are ever exchanged. Napoleon mastered this by understanding that men do not respond to titles or force, as much as they respond to perceived hierarchy. Whoever is perceived as higher in the hierarchy sets the psychological frame, and everyone else adjusts to it unconsciously. This adjustment is where reading becomes predictive. People behave differently when they feel dominant versus when they feel subordinate, and those shifts are automatic. Confidence and dominance are often confused, but they are not the same. Confidence is internal stability. Dominance is relational positioning. A confident person remains consistent regardless of who is present. A dominance-seeking person changes behavior based on audience. This distinction matters. Those who seek dominance reveal insecurity through exaggeration, interruption, volume, and control of space. Those who possess power rarely rush to assert it. They let others reveal their need. Behavioral shifts occur the moment someone enters a room they perceive as higher or lower status. Watch how posture changes. Shoulders pull back or collapse. Speech becomes either more concise or more performative. Humor increases or disappears. These are not conscious choices. They are biological adjustments to hierarchy. The observer notices not just what changes, but when. A person who is relaxed until a specific individual enters the space is revealing perceived hierarchy. A person who becomes louder or more assertive when challenged is signaling threatened dominance. The key is contrast. Power dynamics are visible in transitions, not static moments. Silence plays a critical role here. When you remain silent in a conversation, you force others to reveal how they handle unclaimed power. Some rush to fill the void, asserting control through speech. Others wait, testing the silence. Those who rush fear loss of control. Those who wait are comfortable with ambiguity. This alone tells you who is internally dominant. Napoleon used silence strategically in councils. He allowed others to speak, argue, and expose their priorities while he remained unreadable. By the time he spoke, the hierarchy was already established. Power dynamics are also visible in interruption patterns. Who interrupts whom, and who allows it, reveals hierarchy instantly. A person who interrupts upward in the hierarchy is either naive or challenging. A person who interrupts downward is asserting control. A person who never interrupts upward but dominates downward is insecure. These patterns repeat across contexts. Reading them allows you to predict alliances, conflicts, and future behavior. Another critical indicator is spatial behavior. People move toward power and away from threat. They angle their bodies toward those they seek approval from. They maintain proximity to those they respect. Distance is communication. Someone who invades space may be asserting dominance or seeking reassurance. Someone who creates distance may feel threatened or disengaged. Again, interpretation comes after pattern recognition. One instance means little. Repetition reveals structure. Power dynamics also shape honesty. People tell the truth upward selectively, downward carelessly, and sideways strategically. When someone believes you hold power over outcomes, they manage their image. When they believe you hold no power, they reveal more freely. This is why reading people requires psychological positioning. You must appear neutral enough to lower defenses, but authoritative enough to be taken seriously. This balance makes people reveal more than they intend. Napoleon achieved this balance through controlled presence. He was neither chaotic nor emotionally accessible. He was focused, calm, and reserved. This made people project competence onto him, increasing his psychological leverage. In modern interactions, the same principle applies. The less you seek approval, the more others reveal. Approval seeking reverses power. People sense need instantly. Need collapses hierarchy. Those who need are controlled. Those who do not are followed. Behavioral shifts also occur when power is uncertain. Uncertainty creates anxiety. Anxiety reveals character. Some people overcompensate. Others withdraw. Others seek alliances. Watching how individuals behave when power is unclear is one of the fastest ways to read them. Do they attempt to stabilize through cooperation or control? Do they gather information or dominate conversation? These choices reveal survival strategies. Reading people is not about labeling them good or bad. It is about understanding how they respond to hierarchy stress. Napoleon observed generals not just in victory, but in ambiguity. He trusted those who remained composed when authority was unclear. He distrusted those who became erratic. Power dynamics also explain why some people become hostile toward silence. Silence removes reference points. Without cues, insecure individuals feel exposed. They speak to regain footing. Confident individuals remain still. Watching reactions to silence is one of the clearest power diagnostics available. The observer does not fill the space. They let others define themselves. Another subtle indicator is how people handle disagreement. Those comfortable with power can tolerate dissent without emotional escalation. Those insecure escalate quickly, framing disagreement as disrespect. This is not about ego. It is about hierarchy perception. If someone feels secure in position, disagreement does not threaten them. If they feel fragile, disagreement feels like an attack. Reading this helps you identify who can be trusted under pressure. Power dynamics also influence generosity and cruelty. Those who feel powerful tend to be generous downward. Those who feel threatened tend to be punitive. This is visible in small behaviors, tone changes, patience levels, willingness to listen. These behaviors often contradict stated values. The observer trusts behavior over rhetoric. Another layer of power reading involves mirroring. People subconsciously mirror those they admire or wish to align with. Mirroring posture, speech rhythm, or expressions indicates deference or desire for connection. Lack of mirroring may indicate independence or resistance. Excessive mirroring signals insecurity. Balanced mirroring signals respect without submission. Napoleon noticed this in subordinates. He elevated those who remained respectful but autonomous. Power dynamics also dictate who asks questions and who answers them. Questions can signal curiosity or submission depending on context. A person who asks strategic questions controls the frame. A person who asks clarifying questions may be seeking guidance. Again, context matters. Reading power is not about rigid rules. It is about fluid patterns. The observer watches how roles shift across environments. Someone dominant in one context may be submissive in another. This reveals internal versus situational power. Internal power travels. Situational power evaporates. Those who rely on titles, volume, or enforcement reveal dependence on external authority. Those who rely on presence reveal internal authority. Reading this allows you to predict who will collapse when structures change. Napoleon survived chaotic environments because his authority was internal. He did not require validation. Others did. This difference decided outcomes. Power dynamics are always in motion. The observer stays still. By not competing, not reacting, not asserting prematurely, you allow others to reveal where they stand. And once you see the hierarchy clearly, you no longer need to guess motives. Behavior aligns. People act according to position. Reading people without them knowing is ultimately about understanding this invisible structure and positioning yourself just outside it, close enough to observe, distant enough to remain unreadable. Strategic silence is where reading people without them knowing becomes complete, because silence is not the absence of action, but the removal of interference. And once interference is removed, people reveal themselves with astonishing consistency. Most individuals are uncomfortable with silence because silence removes feedback. And without feedback, the ego feels unanchored. Humans are conditioned to adjust behavior based on reaction, approval, disagreement, validation, resistance, but when silence replaces reaction, the mind scrambles to regain control. This scramble produces information. Napoleon understood silence not as hesitation, but as pressure without visibility. When you speak less than expected, others speak more than intended. When you react less than expected, others overcompensate. Strategic silence creates a vacuum, and human psychology abhors a vacuum. People fill it with explanation, justification, confession, or performance. The observer lets this happen. Confirmation is not about catching someone in a lie. It is about allowing patterns to repeat until truth becomes undeniable. Silence stretches time. In that stretch, inconsistencies surface. Someone who is dishonest can maintain a story briefly. Over time, cracks appear not because they forget details, but because emotional alignment fails. The words stay polished, but tone shifts. Confidence fades. Irritation leaks. This is confirmation through patience. Most people ruin confirmation by confronting too early. Confrontation triggers defense. Defense creates better lies. Silence triggers exposure. Strategic silence also allows you to test assumptions without accusation. When you believe you've read someone correctly, you do not reveal your understanding. You adjust your behavior subtly and watch their response. If someone seeks control, you remove resistance and observe whether they escalate. If someone seeks approval, you withdraw validation and observe whether they chase. If someone claims indifference, you create absence and observe whether they re-engage. These are not games. They are diagnostics. You are not manipulating emotion, you are observing reaction to environmental change. Reaction is always more honest than declaration. Napoleon did this constantly. He altered conditions and watched who adapted versus who panicked. Those who panicked revealed fragility. Those who adapted revealed resilience. Silence sharpens this process because it prevents contamination. When you explain, justify, or announce your intent, you influence outcomes. When you remain silent, outcomes reveal intent. Strategic silence also preserves your unreadability. The more you explain yourself, the more material others have to analyze you. The less you explain, the more others project. Projection is valuable information. What people assume about you reveals their fears, desires, and internal hierarchies. Silence invites projection. Someone who assumes you are weak will behave differently than someone who assumes you are powerful. Watching how they behave tells you how they see the world. This is confirmation at the meta level. Silence also exposes who needs control. In group settings, silence destabilizes those who rely on dominance through speech. They interrupt. They assert. They fill space aggressively. Others remain comfortable. This distinction is immediate and reliable. The observer does not compete for space. They allow space to reveal structure. Confirmation also occurs through consistency. People can fake character temporarily. They cannot fake it repeatedly across contexts. Strategic silence extends interactions, allowing multiple data points to accumulate. Over time, the pattern becomes obvious. This is why reading people is not about sharp instincts alone, it is about patience. Smart people often fail here because they trust their intelligence to be sufficient. They want to move quickly. Speed feels like control. Silence feels passive. In reality, silence is control deferred, not surrendered. Napoleon deferred action until others committed themselves psychologically. Once committed, reversal was difficult. The same applies socially. When people reveal themselves voluntarily, they are less able to deny it later. Strategic silence also protects you from overconfidence. It keeps you from believing your own interpretations prematurely. By waiting for confirmation, you reduce error. This discipline separates true readers from guessers. Guessers feel clever. Readers feel calm. Calm comes from certainty earned, not assumed. Silence also amplifies small signals. In noisy environments, microreactions are drowned out. In silence, they are magnified. A pause, a glance, a breath becomes meaningful. This is why interrogators lower their voice instead of raising it. Loudness creates resistance. Quiet creates attention. Silence forces people to listen to themselves. When people hear themselves speak uninterrupted, they often reveal more than intended. They rationalize. They justify. They contradict. The observer notices without interruption. Confirmation emerges naturally. Another critical element of strategic silence is restraint after confirmation. Once you know, you do not reveal that you know. Revelation shifts power back to the other person. Knowledge held quietly is leverage. Knowledge announced is negotiation. Napoleon rarely revealed full awareness. He allowed enemies to underestimate or misunderstand him. This preserved advantage. In daily life, the same principle applies. When you show your hand, people adjust. When you stay silent, they continue revealing. Silence also neutralizes manipulation. Manipulators rely on reaction. They provoke emotion to steer behavior. Silence starves manipulation. Without reaction, manipulative tactics lose effectiveness. The manipulator escalates or retreats. Either response reveals strategy. Strategic silence also teaches you when not to act. Not every truth requires confrontation. Sometimes the greatest advantage is simply knowing. Knowing allows positioning, timing, and preparation. Napoleon chose battles carefully. He did not react to every provocation. He waited until conditions favored him. Reading people without them knowing gives you the same luxury. You act when action serves you, not when emotion demands it. Confirmation through silence also applies inwardly. You observe your own reactions. If someone triggers irritation, attraction, or defensiveness, you note it without acting. This self-observation prevents projection. It keeps your perception clean. The observer is disciplined not just externally, but internally. Strategic silence is not emptiness. It is focus. It is the space where truth surfaces unforced. Most people fear silence because it removes social armor. The reader embraces silence because it removes deception. By the time others realize they have been understood, it is too late and they rarely realize it at all. They simply feel seen without knowing why. That is the final layer of reading people without them knowing. You do not chase truth. You make space for it, and truth walks out on its own.